In this video, we're going to demonstrate how the heterogeneity works in our model. In the previous video, we focused on unfavorable conditions when we model the whole collector and colloid as uniform surfaces of uniform charge. Remember, under unfavorable conditions, the colloid approaches to the surface, but there is a significant repulsion that we call energy barrier that arises from the fact that the charges are the same and we have this significant electrostatic repulsion by virtue of the electrodouble layer. Okay, so under these conditions we see no attachment. We see that the colloid goes close to the surface, spend a significant time closer to the surface and exit the system. Now, we know that in real systems, even though in conditions that are supposed to be unfavorable, mean field conditions are unfavorable, we know and we observe that there is attachment. So the colloid and the collector get into contact. So one strategy to actually take in account these observations was to introduce discrete nanoscale heterogeneity. And that's what we're gonna do right now. Okay, so to begin with, I'm gonna simulate only one colloid. I'm gonna ramp up a little bit the velocity, and it's gonna be a small one. It's gonna be a 300 nanometer in radius, 600 nanometer diameter colloid. And look at these mean field potentials. I'm gonna make both collector and colloid the same sign, so they're gonna have repulsion. So under completely unfavorable conditions, there should be no attachment at all. But now we're gonna introduce heterogeneity. We have here in this panel collector heterogeneity parameters. Take in mind that these heterogeneity parameters are representing discrete patches. Actually, they are like circular patches of attractive charge. It means if the whole collector is negative in charge, the charge of the head domain, that's what we call this discrete domain, is going to be positive. Okay, so we have different types of representations of the surface because this heterogeneity try to represent what is physical roughness or like chemical heterogeneity, what's different charge, as a single entity. And these head domains are going to have a size. So for this case, I'm going to put a fairly big size, 140 nanometers. And you can have it there. And notice as soon as I put a value here, a lot of other fields activate in this panel. That means I have the option, if you take a look at here at head mode, it's going to tell you what kind of distribution of sizes of these head domains you're going to have in your collector. And you have head mode 1, 5, 9, 73, and this corresponds to different Pareto distributions. Head mode 1 is just uniform size. Head mode 5, it means 1 large head domain, 5 medium. Head mode 9, 1 large head domain, 8 medium. And head mode 73, 1 large, 9 medium, and 64 small. So we're going to use mode 9 for this case. And the second size, the medium size, has to be smaller. That's the distribution. I'm going to use 70 nanometer. Okay. Now, take in mind that this is the distribution of sizes, and now you need to set what's going to be the fractional surface coverage. That means if you integrate all the areas of all these nanometric head domains across the surface of the collector, you should yield a fractional surface coverage. And this coverage is in experiments, and in our simulations, to match our experiments, we learned that it has to be pretty small, like in the order of fractions of percentage, like 0.02%, 0.06%. But now we're going to use a fairly big one, 20%, just to demonstrate the model. Okay? Otherwise, it's going to take longer time, and that's why we run this in supercomputers. Okay? So now we have this set up. Now I want you to direct your attention to the simulation time step and slow motion parameters. So we have some multipliers of dt that are going to control how frequent the calculations are going to be performed in each domain, like in the bulk of the fluid, in the near surface, or in contact. So I'm going to put this 20. It means that we're going to factor 20 times the momentum relaxation time, dt, that we use inside our code to calculate the next translation when the colloid is in the near surface. The near surface, recall, is less than 200 nanometer. And then the contact time multiplier, I'm going to put this 0.1. Okay, because it's a fairly small colloid, so we are not going to have some numerical artifacts there. Okay. Now everything is set. I'm going to set an output directory to begin this. I'm going to put this in my desktop. I'm going to put a new folder. I'm going to call this heterogeneity. Okay, there we go. And I'm going to put this 6 micron. I'm going to kill this, 600 nanometer. There we go. And then I'm going to run it. So as usual, we have our transport plot as a dashboard. I'm going to maximize this. And remember, this is going to be a small colloid, relatively small colloid. It's going to be closer to the surface because it has some drag. When it goes closer to the surface, go to the near surface domain. I'm going to start looking at the colloidal forces. And now the difference from the previous video, now in this panel in the bottom right, we're going to have the area in the zone of influence occupied with heterodomains. So we're going to have a fractional area when the colloid hovers over a head domain. It's going to start showing here. So all the surface is repulsive, but as soon as it finds these patches, this value is going to be different than 0. It's going to increase. And that's the important thing to look right now. The behavior will be like unfavorable, with the exception that is going to attach. And now you can see here in the near surface plot how we have the colloid, and this is our heterogeneous surface. In the red, we have these green patches that represent our head domains. Remember, this is just a exaggerated fractional surface coverage, but that's because we want this to attach fairly quick, so you can see that. Okay, now we're going to the near surface, and look, it's going to the secondary, in the near surface going to the secondary minimum, but now the barrier is going to be eliminated locally because of the influence of the head domain, and that's how you allow this attachment to happen. And since this is a really fairly simple concept, the application of this during several years taught us that we really need a distribution of head domain sizes to capture experimental trends across different colloid sizes, different fluid velocities, different ionic strength conditions. Okay, notice that how the area COI is going to start increasing. It means our colloid is going over a head domain, and as soon as this increases, the colloidal force become attractive, negative. It means it's getting pulled towards this attractive patch. And I can tell you for sure it will attach. These head domains are fairly big for this colloid. Let's see. I may edit this part if this takes too long, but let's observe for a minute. Well, as we just saw in the near surface plot, it seems that the colloid just passed that head domain. It wasn't too close to actually getting pulled towards the surface, and the fractional area now go back to 0 again until it finds the next head domain. So all this process of finding head domains is why these mechanistic simulations are really important. You need to have your system simulate every single translation, taking account all these forces, to have a statistical representative result. And that's the important thing of this model, especially when you can parallelize this and run hundreds of thousands of particles. Then you will have a representation of how effective is filtration under some conditions that mimic the real system. So now take a look. Now we have a really high fractional area of COI occupied by head domains. A-frag is how we call this inside the model. And now the colloid is getting pulled closer and closer towards the surface, but it's still 100 nanometer away, so it may diffuse away. Because remember, this is a fairly small colloid, and diffusion play a role. As you can see in the trajectory, this wiggling is because of diffusion. So now we can see that finally this colloid found a head domain close enough, and now it's in contact. And this is the typical contact torque balance where the adhesion and repulsive forces are going to be coming to equilibrium. So notice how this trajectory was looking for different head domains and then finally attach it. Alright, that's quite a long simulation time because of all the conditions that we're trying to represent now. Okay, so let's try to look into the plot just to explain how the heterogeneity works in the mechanistic fashion. Let's give a few seconds until the program is now saving a lot of the data was generated in figures and flux files. So let's give it a second. There you go. So everything is completed. We can see that the resolution of this colloid was attached K2, which means that the colloid rested in contact over the surface of the collector. I'm going to open the figure that was in my desktop, a heterogeneity 600 nanometer colloid. And if we do the near surface figure, I'm going to open this right now. It's going to take a few seconds. Right, there you have. This is the near surface figure. And let's take a look at this. The colloid is not in contact, and this is a point of view from away from the surface on top of the colloid, which is represented by this yellow ring. This bigger yellow ring just represents the equator of the colloid. But notice that we have this smaller ring, and this circle represents the zone of interaction or the zone of influence where the colloidal interactions actually are significant. And what represents this, if we look it from the side as we have in the other panel right here, we can see that we actually are integrating the, try to make this a little bit bigger. Yeah, there we go. We are integrating the interactions in this zone of interaction. So we have a fraction here occupied by head domain and a fraction that's red, that's the collector what's repulsive, and the electric double layer interaction will be the linear combination of those fractional areas inside the zone of interaction. So what's going to happen when the colloid attach, if we look at the dash figure that I'm going to open right now, is that fractional area is going to be greater than 0 and greater than 0.5, and it's going to become net attractive area. And let me see. So this is what we have in the dashboard figure, which is the transport figure right here. Let's see. There you go. Here you can see how the fractional area is 0 in the bulk, and then when going closer to the surface, start to scan the surface, and this go back to 0 and high values, 0, low values, and that represent that the colloid is hovering over repulsive and attractive regions of the collector surface. At some point, you can see here in the separation distance, it diffuses back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, until the combination of separation distance and head domain fractional area renders the conditions favorable to attachment to occur. And then the colloid gets pulled towards the surface and rolls into contact, and the simulation is completed. Okay, so imagine we have to repeat this process for a large number of colloids to have an aesthetically representative result. All right. So now I'm going to open the contact figure, detail figure, which should be in the same folder, and contact 1, that's the one we want. And this figure is going to show the two surfaces in contact when the simulation pretty much ends. And we can see here in red is the collector surface, which is repulsive. But look at this huge green area. It means that's our head domain. Look, this is a huge head domain that relative to the zone of influence of the colloid, and we can see here the two surfaces in contact. Okay, so this was the culprit of the Hall attachment to occur. The mechanistic simulation performed shows how the colloid is translated by all these forces, but actually has to find this landing patch. Otherwise, attachment wouldn't occur. Right. Then you can see both surfaces, and this is the colloid surfaces, which is showing in gold. Right. And the zone of influence, I think, is getting masked because of this gold colloid that looks pretty flat from here. But I can tell you, the majority of the zone of interaction is going to be occupied by this green head domain. So we have an attractive surface. All right. Okay. Now we're going to run. Notice that I reset all the conditions. I'm going to run a larger colloid. So let's try to replicate the heterogeneity conditions for a larger colloid. So we have one colloid, repulsive conditions, right? But now it's going to be like a 3 micron in radius colloid. It's going to be a 6 micron colloid, 10 times larger than the previous one. And we're going to use the same heterogeneity. So look at this. This was 140 nanometer. And was a head mode 9. This was 70 nanometer. Same fractional surface coverage, 20%, fairly big. No heterogeneity in the colloid. The velocity was factor of 10. It's the same condition as the previous one. And now for the near surface multiplier, I'm going to increment this to 10 because this is a larger colloid. The time step scales with sides, and I don't want this artificially just to crash into the collector surface. And contact time, I think it's fine to leave it at 0.1. All right. Remember, this is unfavorable simulation with heterogeneity in the collector. But now we're going to see maybe because of the size of the colloid, it's not going to be able to attach. Let's see. So the output directory, same folder, heterogeneity. And now I'm going to call this 6 micron. 6 micron collector only. Yeah. Denoting that we have heterogeneity only in the collector. Okay, so everything is set to run, and let's do it. Again, we have a dashboard. This colloid, fairly quick, is already in the near surface because of the drag. You can see now you can see the head domains are way smaller than the colloid. It's because the colloid is bigger, larger. The head domains are the same, and now they appear smaller relative to the size of our colloid. Right. And we already are looking, fractional area is already in the near surface, go really far, fairly quick to the near surface, and it's already scanning the surface as it's translated across the collector. And here you can see you go like fractional surface coverage to 0.4, they go back to 0, or sorry, to like a value of 0.1, then increment, decrement. And the reason that maybe it's not going back to 0 is because the zone of influence, the zone of interaction of this larger colloid is large enough that there is always going to be some head domain in this area. And I think that's the case. We're going to look into the near surface plots at the end of the simulation so we can look at it. And there you can see. Remember, this distribution of head domains is across the whole collector. It means that the location of these green patches are explicitly defined in our algorithm. But that means that we don't have a lot of data that we're reading from where the locations. We're generating using a procedural algorithm that actually is painting in an explicit way only the colloids, only the head domains around the projection of the colloid. But we can, if we want, we can generate the whole surface, and they're going to be the exact same locations of all these head domains. So it's completely explicitly defined. And now you can see, look at this. This area of COI go oscillates from 0.4, go back to 0.1, 0.4, 0.1, and that means that the surface, even though that has large head domains, large areas of attractive charge, they are not large enough to actually render the whole interaction, the net interaction, attractive. See that? So we're never going to have like greater than 0.5 fractional area of COI occupied by head domains because it's a large colloid. And this means for a larger colloid, you have two options. You can change the surface of the collector. That will be inconsistent with the surface that we use for the small collector, because in reality we expect the same surface, right? So what we think is happening is there should be also some heterogeneity that's a characteristic proper of each colloid. And we can think like if you have a larger colloid, that 6 micron colloid, maybe heterogeneity is going to be more scale with colloid size, or that we can represent this using head domains also in the colloid. All right. So in this representation, I adopted that this is going to attach. Let me see, we have a near surface. Yeah, we have a near surface. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to stop this simulation. And unfortunately, we don't have a way to actually stop it simply as closing it. So what I'm going to do is just going to close the program and then look at these plots before we close it. All right. So I'm closing this program. For example, let me see if it lets me. Maybe not. Yeah. Okay, now I just closed that, so it's gonna generate an error because I closed something that shouldn't be closed. But now we can take a look at this. And take a look. We look at this. This is the heterogeneous surface, and of course this patch is going to be everywhere. Remember, it's 20%, but because of computational intensity, we just decide to represent a few patches of head domain around the zone of influence. And look at this closely. This is the zone of influence. It's large enough when this translates, there is always at least one small head domain here. And that's how we have this fractional surface occupied by head domains oscillating, because we have a medium head domain, a large head domain, a medium head domain. But even though we have larger and smaller, there weren't enough area occupied by them to render the interaction attractive. All right. So what I'm going to do now, even though that the program crashed, I make it crash. I'm just gonna close this, and I'm gonna try to relaunch the program, and then use this the same surface, and now add the heterogeneity into the colloid as well. All right. So I'm gonna stop and record the whole thing. Relaunch the software. Let's quickly go to the same characteristics, same parameters. So remember, large colloid, repulsive surfaces. I'm gonna put this 20 here to make this run a little bit faster. 0.1 here, that was fine. Large head domain was 140 nanometers. We're gonna put like a small head domain was 70 nanometer, 0.2, and we know that this surface is not enough to catch the colloid, to actually arrest it over the surface, attach. So we're gonna put some heterogeneity in the surface of the colloid as well. And now we need to take into account something else. When we have the heterogeneity in the colloid, it means that we can have the same, like a single size or Pareto distributed heterogeneity size, but our model yet is not able to actually track the locations of all these head domains in the colloid without allowing this colloid to rotate and explicitly track all these locations. So that's fairly complicated. So a strategy that is going to help us to represent the heterogeneity in the colloid without incrementing the computational intensity in a significant manner is just get a high fractional surface coverage. So I'm gonna put like 40%, or my colloid is going to be covered by head domains. In that way, it doesn't matter if the colloid rotates or not, we're always gonna have the same fraction of attractive head domains in the zone of influence on the colloid surface. And take a look, we have an error catching here. If I put this really small, like 0.01, for example, it's going to tell me this. The combination of colloid heterodomain radius and surface coverage lie outside the limits that allow neglecting color rotation. So I invite you to see this publication from Cesar Ron and William Johnson for more information about that. It means that the upper heterodomain radius limit and corresponding lower surface coverage should be used as default values, so we always make sure that we can neglect rotation of the colloid and have a significant result in the simulation. Okay, so taking account this fractional surface coverage in the collector is explicit. We have all the colloids, all the head domains in the collector surface explicitly located. It's not the case in the colloid. So this is a simplification. So I'm gonna use this, a fairly big one. I'm gonna try to run the same thing. Let me see. Everything seems fine. All right, and then I'm gonna put it in the output directory. I'm going to my desktop, heterogeneity, select this folder, and I'm gonna call this 6 micron colloid and collector head domains. Colloid collector head. Okay, that's good enough, and let it run. Since this is fairly big, we will see the effect almost immediately. Okay, it's already in the near surface. It may take some time to attach, but because it has a larger settling component, it's going to be pulled towards the surface more effective, and it will get there fairly faster in simulation time relative to the small one. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to explain the near surface plots in a minute, but let's see the simulation run for a few seconds. Okay, it's already getting into contact. And now it's gonna touch and roll. Even though that the surfaces are repulsive, when they find heterogeneity, and we have this complementary effect of the heterodomains on the collector and the heterodomains on the colloid surface. Okay, so I will let it finish now. All the data is gonna be properly saved. It's gonna take a few seconds. I'm gonna look into the near surface and contact plots in greater detail. Alright, this is continued. Let me see which one remains open. So let's take a look at the contact figure first, because it's not closed by the system by default. Look at this. So this is the zone of influence. The red surface is the collector. Looks pretty flat in this scale. The gold surface is the colloid. You can see the curvature there. And there you can see your colloid has these patches. In blue, we decide to depict the head domains that are part of the colloid. And as you can see, we always have a head domain in the center, in the closer point to the collector, and this distribution has to be of a fractional surface large enough to neglect rotation. That's why we have these fairly frequent and kind of regular locations of head domains in the colloid. And now look at the collector. So in the collector, you can see from the perspective of the collector, in the zone of influence we only have a small head domain relative to the size of the zone of interaction. So this wouldn't be enough to actually arrest the colloid. But if you see from the other end, you will see that in this area in red, from the other side, we have quite a few of colloid heterodomains. And the complementary effect of this green one and these blue ones renders the surface favorable locally for the colloid to attach. Okay, let's take a look at this from the far away, near surface, a little bit farther away, and open the figure. I'm going to my desktop. I have heterogeneity, and this is the one I just simulate. near surface is gonna be open. And now you can see like how we have this heterogeneity around the colloid in a different scale. Look at this. So here you can see this is the colloid, this is the equator, and we depict all these tiny blue head domains, remember was 16 nanometer in radius, over the surface of the colloid, this heterogeneity of the colloid. And in green, from this perspective, it's easier to see. Let's see if we can make this a little bit bigger. There we go. You can see that's the surface of the collector in green, and this is the head domains of the colloid in blue, and that's the zone of influence. So it has to actually find a region, the location of the colloid has to be adequate to have this complementary effect and actually attach. Okay, so now we demonstrate for different colloid sizes how the same surface can attach, though, even that's 600 nanometer and 6 micron, if we take into account also the heterogeneity in the colloid. So take a look more into publications that we mentioned before, so you can see more details how this was performed, all the data and predictions that we're able to get there. All right. So I think that's it for this video, and we're gonna keep making more videos relative to this Parti-Suite, and we hope that you guys are interested and learn a little bit more of colloid filtration theory. Thanks.